In our last episode of Koine Corner, episode number 88, we saw some Sadducees come to Jesus and try to trap him with a question about the resurrection. We saw first and foremost that the Sadducees don't believe in resurrection. And then they came to Jesus with a question based on Leverate marriage, where Moses had written that you have a requirement if your brother dies and leaves behind a widow and no heir, that you marry your brother's widow and produce heirs on his behalf. They posed this question. A man dies leaves behind a wife but no son. His brother marries him and he dies, leaving behind no heir. And then the next brother and the next brother through 7 brothers. Whose wife will she be at the resurrection is the question. They employ a rhetorical strategy known as argumentum ad absurdum. They take the issue at hand and they pose an example that is ridiculous in its extremity. It's absurd because of how many brothers are involved. And they say to Jesus, as a form of a trap or a test, let's see what you will do with this. He will either dispute Moses, who said that the brothers have a duty to marry her and produce an heir, or he will dispute resurrection, which they already don't believe in, as a means of dismissing their absurd scenario that they've posed. Today what we're going to look at is Jesus' response to their absurd scenario. Will be mostly in Mark chapter 12 with a little reference to Matthew and Luke. Let us begin with Mark chapter 12 verse 24. This is from the ESV. Jesus said to them, "Is this not the reason you are wrong, because you know neither the scriptures nor the power of God?" So he says that their error is twofold. You know neither the scriptures nor the power of God. But before we get to that, I want to look at this great rhetorical flourish that Mark records Jesus using here in verse 24. Dia tuto planaste. So let's start in the middle. Dia tuto. Dia tuto, on account of this. And then is the negative, and planaste is second person plural. You are being deceived, or you are being led astray. You are wrong. You are in error, right? So because of this, and this verse is a question, so are you not, because of this, being misled or being led astray? Are you not deceived on account of this? This is called begging the question. Most of the time when we hear people say, well, that begs the question, they use it the wrong way. Begging the question is not saying, well, what you just said brings up this question subsequently. That's how we usually hear it used, but that's wrong. Begging the question is about a previous question that went unasked and therefore unanswered, but the answer is being assumed to be true. So Jesus says to these guys, isn't this the reason that you're wrong? So what question was unasked and is being assumed, answered, and agreed upon? That they are wrong. Aren't you guys wrong here? That's the question that is unasked. He assumes that the question was asked and answered, and assumes that we all agree that they are in fact deceived. Isn't this the reason that you guys are wrong? Wait a minute, who said we're wrong? We didn't agree that we're wrong. So this is begging the question in the best possible way. It's a great example of it. It's brilliant. He doesn't even open up the opportunity to consider that they might be right. That's kind of a great rhetorical strategy. Matthew lacks the question part of this. He starts out and just says, you are deceived because you know neither the power of the scriptures nor the power of God. He doesn't ask the question. And Luke omits this entire verse. Let us carry on with the second part of his question. So isn't this why you guys are deceived? Me edotes tas graphos mede tein dunamin tu theu. Now notice there's me edotas, so it's a negated participle. The participle is for to know. So you guys neither know, then later on we get that mede. When you see the me and the mede, you know you have a neither nor construction. So what is the issue at hand? Dia tuta. This thing on account of this, on account of what? On account of the fact that they neither know, tas graphos, the scriptures, mede, nor tein dunamin, the power, to theu, of God. There were two issues in their trap, right? Their two issues were what Moses had written, the scriptures, and resurrection, how things would work in resurrection, the power of God. The power of God to put life back in the lifeless. So Jesus says, isn't this the reason you guys are misled and deceived? Isn't this the flaw in your reasoning? You know neither the scriptures, what Moses wrote, nor the power of God, resurrection. Let us carry on. Verse 25. For when they rise from the dead, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. So notice, Jesus doesn't argue whether there will be a resurrection. His response presumes a resurrection, and then he addresses the issue at the heart of their absurd scenario. Whose wife will she be? That was the question that they asked. They run through the scenario and they say, then at the resurrection, whose wife will she be? And he says, because you guys neither know the scriptures nor the power of God, what you don't understand is in the resurrection, they will neither marry nor be given in marriage. Notice that he uses both, because in the time and place, men marry, women are given in marriage. In a traditional marriage ceremony in the West today, you will still hear the question asked, who gives this woman in marriage? So men and women given, marrying and given in marriage, not the case in the resurrection. Why not? Let's look. Because al esin hos angeloi en tois oranois. Al esin, rather they are, hos angeloi, as angels or like angels, en tois oranois, in the heavens. So at least in regard to marriage, the resurrected are as or like the angels as far as not marrying. Marriage is not an issue for the resurrected. Matthew and Mark say it the same way. Take a look. Hos angeloi, as angels or like angels. But Luke says not hos angeloi, but is angeloi, equal to angels or like angels. In the New Testament, is angeloi is a hapax legomenon. It's the only occurrence of this word in the New Testament. The word exists in Greek in non-Christian literature, but this is the only example in the New Testament. There's another example in some extra-biblical Christian literature, Didache, like 8 or something like that. But it does exist in one other occurrence in some Christian literature, but not in the New Testament. Why does that matter? Does it matter at all? Not very much. But it's interesting that this term that exists, not copiously, but it does exist out in non-Christian Greek, is used by our only native Greek-speaking gospel author, Luke, whereas the other two guys use hos angeloi, like or as the angels. Let's get to the conclusion in verses 26 and 27. And as for the dead being raised, have you not read in the book of Moses, in the passage about the bush, how God spoke to him, saying, I am the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not God of the dead, but of the living. You are quite wrong. So did you see it? The basis of their question, when we go all the way back to the beginning of their interaction, the Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, said, "Teacher, Moses wrote to us." So what does Jesus do? Jesus starts out with Moses. He goes back. Don't you know about, have you not read in the book of Moses? Okay, you want to talk about Moses? Let's talk about Moses. And then he says in the passage about the bush, about the burning bush, how God spoke to him. What's at the heart of their misunderstandings, of their being deceived? They know neither the scriptures nor the power of God. So now Jesus quotes the writings of Moses from Exodus at the story of the burning bush, and within that quote, Moses quotes God. So he's addressing both their failures, their lack of knowledge of the scriptures and of the power of God. And God says that he is, not he was, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but he is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then Jesus interprets and says he is the God of the living and not the dead. And then we get this magnificent coup de grace at the end. The ESV says you are quite wrong, but let's look at it in Greek. Polou planaste. Polou, much. Planaste, you are being deceived. You are much deceived. You are much led astray. Did you notice something about Jesus' response? He says almost nothing about their actual question, the scenario. He treats that quickly and succinctly. He ignores the ridiculous scenario about 7 brothers and the one wife, and instead he uses Moses and the writings of Moses to correct them on their dual problem, on their understanding of Scripture, on their understanding of the power of God, and subsequently resurrection and post-resurrection life. It's interesting stuff. And what's their biggest flaw? They are much deceived. They are much led astray. How so? On account of this, dia tuta. They know neither the scriptures nor the power of God. He corrects them on both by starting out with that great begging of the question. The question that he assumes, you guys are deceived, without needing to ask it nor answer it, then he lays out the heart of their deception. And if you're somewhat deceived out there, let this drive a final nail in this question. You don't need to marry your sister-in-law. I hope that was good for you. If so, you know all the stuff to do, the liking, the subscribing, the sharing and such. Hit the notification bell so you know when there's some new content. And until next time, Karis Kairene, you mean grace and peace to you.